All right, so thank you for
Thanks.
for being right here. And kind of I just wanna like for those that don't know you and your work or are familiar with your work, yeah, I you captured a part of Los Angeles history, because you were there, right? And then you kind of on journey to still photo was it still photography,
Yes,
right?
still photography.
Still photography. So I mean, just take us from where did the photography start? How did you get into photography? And then yeah, and then we'll go on the journey.
Okay. Photography started as a child,
Mm.
young. I think at like 8 or 9, I used to, I used to have, I used to take army men. So I would photograph army men in
Mm.
little still lifes.
Right.
So that grew later, 8, 9, 10. 13, I started to process my own film
Mm.
and print. I did a little bit in junior high for this for their some school projects. I did high school. I took photography
Mm.
where I did more printing.
What
Actually,
high school did you go to?
I went to Taft High School.
Taft, San Fernando Valley,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yes, until I dropped out,
Uh huh.
and then I went to continuation school
That's
for my
right.
last
Yeah,
year.
yeah,
So I'm still a high school
yeah,
dropout,
yeah, yeah, yeah. High school dropout.
and then through high school, when I was there, I actually failed photography. I think
Mm.
2 years. I think I got a C maybe on 1 year of it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
took always. I guess I was the one who wanted to do what I want to do,
Right,
and
right, right, right.
I would have an assignment.
And not complete or not fulfill what the assignment
Yeah,
required, right?
it
And,
was my own assignment.
oh, and so you're on this journey, right? You're
Yeah,
introduced to photography in high school, and then like you continue, right? You continue, and me knowing your story, it's like just take us to that part, right? That you wanted to do something more culturally centered, more Angelino, right? Because and then that's when you, I guess, knocked on the door of the sheriffs, So like, can you just take us
yeah,
to like,
sure. Well, actually, let's say like about 15, I was always interested in something that would be sort of subcultures, or at
mm,
least, I'm this white kid growing up in Encino.
mm-hmm,
So I was always interested seeing something out, sort of outside of that. So I think at about 15, my cousin and I used to go down to Skid Row at the time.
mm.
And
What
then,
years are these? Around what years?
and oh my God, probably like the early 70s
Yeah, 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 yeah. Shh, that was a
and
whole
stuff.
different
So
beast down there, huh?
it was strange. Yeah. So we'd go down to Skid Row and photograph.
Yeah.
And that we did for some years. And then it was, I'm a street photographer, but it's more about finding a subject.
Right.
Sometimes I can't just go out to point A, B, and C,
Right,
find
right,
it.
right, 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 right.
So once I have a subject that I'm interested in, I sort of stay in that. So
Mm,
it was sort of the Skid Row
right,
and that
right.
culture. And then from that, I spent a summer photographing a a Pentecostal revival in a tent outside of LA.
Oh wow. Wow,
So
wow,
I
wow,
don't know how
wow,
I
wow,
got
wow.
access in there, but I'd go on the weekends,
Yeah,
and again I spent time with that.
with them, right?
So that'd be an archive of mine. From that point, still trying to search something else or some subject, I was able to get access to a state psychiatric hospital.
Mm, mm, mm. Right, let me just a
Okay.
quick question. Like you being from Encino, right, which is predominantly a middle class neighborhood, right? For
Yeah.
people that don't know, right?
Yes.
Predominantly probably white back in those
Yes.
days, right?
Very white. Yeah.
Very white back in those days. So like what like there it's a different culture, bro. You're coming into the black and the brown communities of Los Angeles, right? So first of all, what was the difference in that? What brought you in, and like the scared part, right? Because that's what people are gonna be like, like weren't you scared? Like those are some just general questions, like and yeah, if you could just touch on that, the fear factors and what was those, if you remember the beginning days entering this world.
Where the whole Chicano culture started first. And for me, the Chicano culture would be driving and seeing some tagging up on the wall,
Mm,
murals,
mm.
and I always
And where
found
did
the
you see
art
that
of it.
first? Where did you see
I
that first?
found that I lived in West Hollywood at the time.
Uh-huh.
So I think the stuff that I saw at the time would be more the Diamond Street.
Diamond Street. Yep. Yeah. West Side Diamond Street.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So I thought that. And I was always interested in the artwork, sort of. I saw it.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it. I said, hey, this is interesting.
Yeah. On the
To
walls,
me,
right?
yeah, to me. And again, for fear, I guess it's a little fearful. I'm not going to stop and
Right.
see. So like it started there. And then, again, I don't know how I found all these people, but it was this artist that I became that I found, and that was John Aladez. And he had a studio out on Broadway and Third. And I saw the work he did, and again, it was all these cholas, this great art. So that sort of stemmed this inspiration, because I'm seeing his artwork, and then to me, it's, hey, how do I really find this?
Right.
So really, that was the subject that sparked my interest. At around the same time, I saw the play Zoot Suit. So from artwork, I'm able to see a performance of this.
Right. And it kind of clicked together right there, right?
Yes. So all of it came in, and then at the point, so I started, the way I usually find a project is I start calling people. So I call this, or I call an agency, and I'm trying to find out where are all these gangs? How do I get in there to a point when I can start to...
What type of agencies are you calling?
Well, I called LA County Probation Department. So I started with that, and they hooked me up with this man who was fairly new, and he had
probation officer.
Yes,
LA County probation officer.
Yes, and he had an East LA caseload.
Yeah.
So he took me out there, Eloyo.
Yeah, Eloyo Maravilla. All right.
So that's where I first started.
So you just call up. You're like, hey, I'm a photographer.
Yeah.
And I wanna click up with a probation officer to document.
Yes.
And they were like, sure.
Yeah, sure. At that time, it wouldn't happen now.
No, not at all.
No,
that's
now,
what people don't know.
It wouldn't happen.
Right?
So I started shooting. So he took me out there, and then I started to go on my own. But we also became friends. And then the two of us would start, and we would hit the streets ourselves. And
what was the first time when you hit the streets, right? Do you remember, like, because it's that, right? Like, I know this, right? But it's just like, bro, when you're in the barrio, and back then, this is the 1970s. Let me tell you, like, I came around in the 90s, so that you still had that essence, right? When you go to some neighborhoods, and the whole block is like old English letters. There's like 100 gang members out there, right? Like, what was that? Like,
I started at the handball courts, Obregon Park.
Obregon Park, and legendary Maravilla handball courts.
So I started that with a group of people.
Right. And he brings you in, and do you remember, like, the setting? Do you remember the barrio? Was it a house, or was it like
Actually, I started at the handball courts.
And the guys were there already, right?
Yes.
All the guys were there.
Everybody was there for it. And then from there, and for them, I set up a small studio inside the rec center.
Oh, wow.
So they let me go in there, and I set up a drop cloth.
Yeah.
And like a strobe system. So I started having them come in to photograph them there.
Right.
So
and what was that like, right? What, did you just be like, hey guys, like you guys want to, like, down for some pictures, or what?
It was sort of that, except it's always a process.
Yeah.
And I've always been fortunate where I get some access to places, and I think you can tell as I stutter too, on and off.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's I think even that it could have helped me. Yeah. I'm very shy.
Yeah.
And I think they sense that. So
maybe
to get to a certain point.
Yeah.
And then again, the process is returning and handing out photographs. And then I think
Yeah.
And
what I love about that, right? Like, and really, like, for people that don't know your work, and for me, like, not only does your works, speak volumes, but the culture, right? And, like, because it's that, like, people that have tapped into this world, right? This culture that you're talking about, this Chicano culture, is now worldwide. And I'll say that Japanese love our culture, right? The Japanese have been rocking lowriders since the 90s. This ain't nothing new, right? So this culture, you were able to tap into, but I think you honored it, and that's the action in honoring it, is you coming back and bringing that photo, what most people don't do. really, right? They come into the community, they they shoot,
Yeah.
and then they're like, peace later, you know. So you doing that in the very beginning, I think was very, you know, something that kind of helped you for the rest, no?
Yeah,
Coming,
sure. I mean, again, as I said, when I shoot a subject,
it's to come back.
I'm
Come
obsessed
get, you're
with it.
obsessed. You're obsessed. Love,
So,
that's it. Obsessed with the subject.
and then hopefully when I'm out there, I also want to learn about someone's culture. Again, I'm an outsider.
Yeah,
I'll, I will always be that outsider, but I still want to learn from it. And I think that, that helps
that's it.
also.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Again, as I said, I don't like going out one place and then I'm gone. I
Mm,
really like to
mm,
learn.
mm,
So
mm.
every neighborhood I went to, I would learn more too.
Mm-hmm.
And then with my friend, the probation officer, we would start to videotape
Mm.
everything. He didn't tell them that. So he always kept that a secret
Right, right,
because he
right,
would
right,
lose his job if he did.
right.
And that's so we would just hit the streets and we'd interview people. I'd go out on my own. I would just drive cold. I'd see someone on the street who looks interesting because to me it's sort of the visual process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then as I'm driving around in my head, it's still that artwork of John Aladez that sort of clicks in my mind because I'm trying to
Mm.
find that person who looks that way on the street. So I'll stop people and I'll have images with me. So I'll get out and I'll talk to them and
Right,
I'll show
right,
them.
right. And that kind of is like the what breaks the ice right there.
I think so.
Right.
In
So,
that part.
so coming into these communities, right?
Yeah.
But let's just really talk about it, right? Because like you see these beautiful images, powerful images, right? But then what they don't see on those images is the chaos and the fucking and the pain and the violence and the CP, right? Like what about that part, right? Because there's one thing about knowing it, and then I think it's a one thing about being in that setting. And when and let me talk specifically, you're in a gang setting. This is not a party. This is a gang
Yeah.
setting, right? That anything could happen at any moment, which things happen. Like was I know you've seen some, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In the hoods, like did anything? Did you feel anything, or did you just like this is part of it? Like I'm into this, or like what about when hit the fan? Hit the fan.
For me, I think what happened also from hanging out in those neighborhoods, something that I became aware of myself is always looking over my shoulder.
Mm.
I didn't do that when I was younger. Anytime I was out there, I'm constantly looking. Everyone else is too. So I saw people. I'm out photographing on the street, and everybody, not constantly, but
But
you're
boom,
always
you're always on it. You're just
you're
always.
always on it. And then all of a sudden, I find myself I'm doing it too. Always.
Right. Yeah. And that was it. You became like I'm part of the community in a way, right? Like one of the photos that really strikes me is the mothers. And so like did you always plan to be as connected with the families, or did it just happen as it organically happened?
I think I tried to create that relationship.
Right, in the homes, because some of
Yeah,
your
yeah,
photography is literally in
yes,
the
yes,
homes,
yeah,
right?
yes. Not all of
Not
it,
all of them.
but again, to show the sense of family.
Right.
Because when you see my images too, I mean, some of them appear to be violent,
Yeah.
and there is violence, but to only capture that one side is not fair
Mm.
because what you're doing is you aren't telling the whole story.
Right.
I mean, when you see some of my image, I guess an outsider will say, "Hey, this is all violent. It's all they see in like a neighborhood."
Mm-hmm.
But it's a very small part of it.
Right.
I mean,
right.
things happen, happens.
Right.
People get killed, people get shot, and this
Right.
happens. But it's a small part of actually what goes on with the whole family unit.
Right.
So
Your images, your body of work, right? Obviously you started from the 70s, right? But I think what we're gonna be able to see right now and in the future is a certain body of work, right? And so what era, what years was that, right? Is it mostly the 70s, the 80s, and like so I want to bring people inside Los Angeles in that era.
Okay.
Because that was like totally different, right? Like I was born in the 80s, and then just remembering then really born in the 90s, which is totally different. But like you're talking about 70s, you're talking about 80s, and then a lot of your work is in the 90s,
Yeah.
is 80s, 90s, right?
the gang work started in 1980.
1980,
So
1980, 1990.
it started there. I was shooting some stuff in the late 70s,
Yeah,
but the gang,
80s. It's
yes,
yeah. So this is
so,
This is 1980s in Los
yes,
Angeles, right?
80s to probably like 96, and then again through Instagram,
Right.
which my wife said, "Hey, why don't you start this?" And said, "Okay, I did." So, so
Shout out to Instagram. Shout out to the gram.
yeah. Well, that's a whole different story.
It's a different.
It depends how you look.
Yeah, just imagine. Yeah, there's
And
the
what,
other
you
side of
know,
that story too.
shout,
Okay.
either you're shouting out to it or you're shouting at it. So I've had each side. I've had the shouting out, and I've had the other.
Yeah. No, it's
not the most
it's a world. It's
experience
a
as
world too, though.
it
Yeah.
can be.
So you start. So yeah, but so the 80s, man, 80s Los
Yeah.
Angeles. What the is Los Angeles like in the 80s?
I mean, it's
Like,
changed.
right? This is let's just I'm gonna set it
Yeah.
up for people like I say that I am I'm a product of that, right? And because I was born in the 80s, and what does that mean? That like if you were in that energy source, that you're a part of that whole what was happening. There's crack, right? Crack's in the streets, right? Like I mean, mass incarceration is is ramping, and it's that like. But what was it like? I was a baby, right? What was it like
Yeah.
as an adult in the streets in 1983?
It was. I don't know. It's really
Well,
hard.
I
to
mean,
say
look
for
at
me.
it. There's music going on, right? There's Jerry curls, right? Like, right? Like it's a different vibe. Like,
Yeah,
like
It's because I started shooting. I mean, actually, the first stuff in 80, and I think in 82, again, I don't know how I got access, but I got access to the Youth Authority.
California Youth Authority, CYA. That's right. Yeah.
So I shot there.
Yeah. And
And
that
then-
becomes another thing, right? Because what like a large body of your work is inside is that,
Is that,
right?
yeah,
And
for-
so and you kind of touched on it too, right? Because I think one of your first assignments was the psych ward,
Yeah,
right? So that's your
yes.
first access into confined space, confined
It was,
subjects,
yes.
right? So you start off, but I know that story, but the audience how did that
Well,
go down?
I mean, psych ward stuff
Psych ward.
is I was given a grant to sort of do a slideshow. At the time, it was just a slideshow.
Mhm.
It was a program at that time where they wanted volunteers to come into the hospital to talk to people there. So they wanted me to do a slideshow. It was supposed to be, it was like a 3-week project.
3-week project, all right.
But I was able to sort of spread it to about a year and a half. So I got lost in the system, and I made sure.
You're running around the facility for a year and a half, right?
Well, they issued me a pass key.
Pass, right?
Key, so I could get into any ward, and these were all locked wards.
Yeah, yeah.
It was like long-term ward, and then it was
and so what? Like just
acute ward.
Yeah, and then like some of these wards, like they have people that were supposed to be in prison, and
Oh,
then
yes.
and then this is a play, guys. I'm telling you, I didn't do it, right? That don't want to do their time, they play the crazy part. It works not for everybody, right? So they play the crazy part, so they don't got to do 15 years in prison. They'll do 5 years at the psych ward, right?
Yeah, that's what
So
they tried to do.
That's
yes.
what you're trying to do,
All the
right?
time.
So shit's crazy over there.
Oh yeah,
but you're in, right?
every
Like,
day. Yeah. Every day there was bloodshed. I mean, and restraints and this or that. Also, at that time, it was all co-ed wards. So you'd have
Fucking
geriatrics,
crazy.
old
Oh
people,
my
you have young
God.
people, you'd have guys 6'4", and you've had old women like that are 5 feet tall.
wow.
You never knew what's going to happen. I mean, someone could go off on someone any second there. But again, for me, it's that energy too.
It's the energy. It's the energy,
Yeah.
and that,
And
you
I
know,
think the
it's
thing
the
with
energy.
shooting gangs
yeah,
is-
yeah. It's the energy. There's an energy out there, right?
When I hit the streets, I don't know what's going to happen. I like to go
Mm.
in blind sometimes.
That's it. And that street photography, and I've been blessed to have my son be a photographer too, right? And he came from, and that's it. Like it's a street photography, right? It's a different beast. It's a different animal. Like we could all go to, we could all go to a gallery, right? But when you hit that street photography section, it just
yeah. For me, it's
And so that's
Always.
kind of what you felt, tapping into the psych ward, and which then California Youth Authority.
Yeah.
Right. So you go from the psych ward to CYA, and what happens at CYA, right? And because I could see it in your work, right? Like, and I see it in these images, and I see like, and what I love about what you did right there, right? Because that's me, right? Like that's the pride, right? You came in there, and then you have the Mexicans, you have the blacks, and then CYA there was hardly no whites like that, right?
Yeah, very few. Also,
Very
what's
few.
interesting too is really there, and also hitting the streets is at that time no one had cameras. So
No one had
today it's
cameras.
changed. No, they
one had
didn't.
cameras back then.
So
That's
I'm out
right.
there. So I was almost an oddity, I guess. Who is this guy? He's white. This out here.
What this
and then
contraption
these
right
pictures.
here? Yeah.
So I don't know if that's anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that.
Yeah.
I think that people took me in, except there was also apprehension.
Right.
So you're always on that fine line.
Right.
Either someone trusts you or they don't trust you, or they hit you up for something.
Right. Because it's always like that, right? Like on the streets, and I think you could, you've been part of the streets for so long, right? You never get nothing for free.
No. You don't always.
Right?
Or when it turned like it
right, because it's always like, oh yeah, but it's never 100, right? There's always gonna be like there's an exchange, right?
Yeah,
there's an exchange, and it might be a candy bar, it might be a
Photos
photo, but there's
me.
you have to know, you gotta know, and I think that's what it was. You kind of respect, you knew that, right? And it could change. You might need a crack pipe, you might need a photo. I don't know.
And that's yeah, and it's
really, this is the streets, So you're in California Youth Authority, and talk to me about what was different at CYA, because it's that, right? Every setting's different. The psych ward was different. The streets are different. What was CYA?
It was still confinement, but again, I'm saying that there weren't cameras at the time. You didn't have hundreds of people shooting on the street with their iPhones.
Right.
So again, I think for someone in that setting, there's not a lot to do every day. Again, it's almost an oddity of someone coming in.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know why they even let me in there.
Did you look at, so when you're talking about CYA, let me just like, I grew up in the system, right? I started jailing from when I was 13 to 27. So like that those years, right? Like of being a young man, like did it like what were those young men like, right? Let people know what because they're kids, they're teenagers. Let me just start there.
Yes.
They're all they're all kids, right? But these kids are like kids you've never seen before. What were these California Youth Authority kids?
I mean, to me, they were always friendly to me, so I could speak to them and like work with them. So I think that was the most interesting. And actually, when you say how they weren't that different
from another kid.
Yes, on the outside,
right? And
so they still have that young quality, and they're teenagers, and they still have that innocence to them.
Right.
What I found interesting is some of them were there for very serious things. But at that age group, they're still young, and there's still the sense of innocence. I find, and even in some of my images, to go back when I'm photographing someone,
and then and those I really love because we could go from the street to the inside, and specifically CYA, right? And I love there's this image that you have with a young black man, and he has this old stereo, and he's going like that. It was like
the boom box.
Yeah, that boom box and that, right? And it's like when you say this young quality, this young thing, I think that's kind of what we see in these images like that. So you CYA and yeah, just where do we go from there? It's
also actually I'm still hitting the streets though. But from CYA, I was able to get access to Chino prison in the early 80s. And that was a whole different type of deal.
Right. And why would you say it was a different type of deal?
Well, because it's a lot. And I mean, there are no longer children there. So it's a whole different vibe. And for me, I'm intimidated with that more than the children.
Yeah.
For me, serious. There's one thing. Actually, I was shooting at Chino in a place called
Palm Hall.
Yes.
And that's where all the organized members, whether Black Guerrilla Family, Mafia, they all go to Palm Hall.
Yes.
So you're in Palm Hall.
Well, what happened with
Some
that?
of the craziest murders happen in
I
Palm
know.
Hall.
So what happened is I got access. What they said is the way it was set up. There was a yard
Mhm.
with handball courts on the right,
Mhm.
and there was a yard with handball courts on the left,
Mm.
and then there's a large walkway through.
Mm.
And then what they said to me is, take a camera, have it on your shoulder, and we just want you to walk up and down that area in between the two
The
yards.
two sections, the 2 yards.
Yes. So it was sort of interesting. So, like on my left, as I'm walking up, that was the Aryan Brotherhood
Yeah.
and the MA
Yeah.
on one side, and they wouldn't say a word to me.
Yeah.
So it's like I wasn't there, and it was interesting. It's because I saw Joe Morgan playing handball. And so he was there with them. I walked up and down. He wouldn't say a word to me. So
Yeah.
whatever. And sort of strange to me. So I said, So I walk on the other
So
side.
so Joe Morgan's playing with the Aryan Brotherhood. He's
And
on
the
that.
MA,
Yeah.
They got together.
They're on that side. They're on that side of one of the gates, right?
Yes.
Got
yes.
it.
On like one of the fenced off
Right.
yards.
Got it.
Then on the other side is the black
The blacks,
guerrilla
the blacks,
family
yeah.
and the NF.
Yeah, and the Northerners.
And then for some reason they came up and they started talking to me.
Yeah.
And, and it's really friendly,
Yeah, it is.
smiling,
It's all that
laughing,
shit, yeah.
talking to me. So I said, hey, this is great.
Yeah.
So then I said, okay. So they sent me home, say this is what's going to happen. So I said, oh my God, I get to shoot there. So I'm so thrilled about it. And then I get a call that evening, and they say, hey, you will not be shooting there because now there's talk on one side about why are you speaking to them. And they said they thought it would maybe cause an incident for me talking to that side. And they said, sorry, it's not safe. You can't come back.
That's it.
And that
It's
was
done.
the end of it. So I never shot there, but I walked up and down with the camera.
It's done.
So that was that.
That
part.
was
I mean,
it. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
But I got to shoot other things.
Right. But you
I
did
just
have a
wasn't
chance
allowed
to
to
go
shoot
back in prison. That
But
was
not Palm Hall.
Yeah.
Yes. So I've shot in Chino, Folsom, women's prison here, Louisiana. I shot
Right.
Angola. I shot the women's max over there also.
Yeah.
So I've done some prison. I love working in prisons.
And let's go back to the streets, like,
Yeah.
because 80s, like, again, like, there's crack, PCP, like, right? It's what I mean, because there's shots. I mean, there's the shots of the homegirls dipping, PCP and that. Like, what the was that like? What the hey, like, bro, this is gorilla piss, bro. This is Superman shit. Let's talk about PCP, right? Wasn't that shit happening?
So for me,
did you see some crazy PCP, right? Or
well, actually, I saw it in the States.
what's the crazy shit you seen on PCP?
I saw it in the psychiatric hospital.
On
stuff.
PCP?
Yeah.
They were smoking PCP at the psych
No,
ward?
they weren't smoking there, but like why they came in.
Okay, go. All right, so what happened?
So I knew. So you always wanted to stay away from those people in the psych ward.
Right,
because
right.
You didn't know.
When
but
they were
out
gonna
on the
just-
streets,
No?
to me, so when I was on the west side with the girls out there shooting, again, I've got this access, so it was great stuff to shoot.
Right.
And I don't know, sometimes I think you have to be there at the right time.
Be there at the right time.
But also, like, not being able to shoot something, so I decided the girls wanted to score some PCP out in Compton.
Right.
So they had a van.
So you're on the west side, right? And now
So
you got
I
to get
said,
a
hey,
Compton.
So I said, hey, why don't you let me
take you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they did.
We're on a PCP run now, guys.
Yeah. So I'm on the, so I'm like laying down in the van and they're stopping out there, and they're trying to score. And then I'm saying, man, why am I even out here? Because I can't shoot.
You're in the van stuck.
It's too dark. And I say, if someone sees me lying down, some guy out there while they're trying to score.
You think you're like a narc or something.
So whatever happened there. So that's, another time I couldn't shoot.
Yeah.
And that's it. But when we shot with the V13, Rolling Stone thing, I got hired by them to shoot something.
To shoot
this
out
was
there in Venice.
88.
Yeah. Shoot in Venice, right?
Yeah. And there was an
so
author.
talk to me about that, right? Because I think, like, even like You are the first one that really took like this culture, our culture, and brought it to the forefront like that, right? So Rolling Stones, like that's, I mean, once Rolling Stones is telling you to go shoot some shit, and then people are aware that this community and is there, right? Like what, how did that how did that happen?
So that happened is I got contacted by them. There was a writer named Mike Sager who actually wrote in Clique. So he
Mm.
wrote the foreword in Clique. They sent him there for 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm,
didn't go. I stayed away just so he could write his article.
mm-hmm.
So he lasted 3 weeks and he was smoking crack with them. So that's what he
Oh,
did. So he had
that
to
was
leave and
his
straighten up.
creative.
So that's how he works, though. He's
Go smoke. Yeah, right.
So-
You want to get in? Don't do it, guys. I'm just gonna tell you. If you guys want to be a writer, and Rolling Stones calls you, they want to do on some fentanyl. Don't try
Yeah.
fentanyl. That was smoke.
Yeah,
That don't.
I know.
It's different time, guys. Right? Don't do that.
So he went
Sorry.
home and then he came back and he did
You want to rehab? Something.
not to rehab, but he was able to sort of handle that
Yeah, good.
himself.
Good.
So he came out, and then I came out after. So he
Mm.
took me in there. So I spent about 4 weeks shooting.
Right. This is so Venice, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
The
so
B-13.
let's just Venice. This is one of the hot real estate in LA, right? You can't even.
Oh, for now.
Oh, you
for
can't
sure.
even buy. You can't buy nothing over there, right?
And this is Oakwood area.
So yeah, so you're in. This is Venice, right? And what's happening in Venice? Shout out to Abakini.
I know.
What's happening in Venice in the 80s right now?
A lot of crack in the 80s.
A lot of
that
crack
would-
in the 80s.
So when you say there isn't anything free ever,
Mhm.
which is true. So this is shooting there too, and that's example. So they didn't have cars. So what I would have to do
Let's give them a ride.
while they scored their crack and stuff.
Fuck.
So I'd take them around and drive and do that. But again, it gave me the access to shoot them too. And they were totally open because the author was there for some weeks. So I came in.
Yeah, they already
and I was able-
knew.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and they were already
yeah.
slamming and doing everything else too.
Yeah, yeah. And it's yeah, I mean the shit was gonna happening regardless, and you're just kind of just documenting it. What about the police? I mean, how did the police feel about you? I mean, because even though it's the same community, they're different sides of the right.
For sure.
So was there any like, even though you used to ride with the police, but when you're rolling with when the barrio and with the gangs, was there any conflict with or not really? You kind of just always had the right words.
It wasn't It's because the police stuff would be. It's still. We worked on this thing in the 80s for at that time Channel 9. We worked on that show. We did a lot of for like the LA Weekly. It gave me access.
So you're yeah.
journalism. And then through Colors.
Through Colors,
when we
that's
got
right,
hired,
that's right.
they wanted me to have more access.
Yeah, right.
So I was able to get access through the film thing. So through Sean Penn.
That's right.
And
so
that helped me get some of the access of like what they shot with me.
This is filmmaking stuff right here, right? And
Yeah.
it was. I'm so blessed that we had Father G here. One of our first interviews was Father G, right? And what G says, check this out, right, is that there's only one movie that shaped the culture, gang culture. There's only one movie. He says, Father Greg says this, right? And that was Colors. That was Colors.
Yeah.
He says that changed it for black and brown kids. And for the rest of the world, because he said prior to that, it's great. That's what I'm saying. Like taking us into the history of Los Angeles. This is the 1980s. No one had phones. No one had cameras, right? So what he says, if I remember correctly, is that prior to this, right? Because at that time, most of the men are gone from these neighborhoods too, right?
A lot of them are in jail.
Most of them are black and brown, are all locked up,
yeah.
right? So you have a group, you have a bunch of black and brown kids, that are adolescents with no father figures, with no right. And he says that prior to that, they understood what was happening in your little communities, but when they seen it on the screen, they're like, "That's what the I am." And he said that movie changed the whole of and gang violence went up, right? They're just out like mass incarceration even went higher in Los Angeles. But you were the one that got the gang members for that movie.
My friend and I,
So
we got them the gang members. So we got them the Crips.
Yeah. And you were in White Fence too, though.
Yep. And some White Fence too. All the Bloods were actors.
All the Bloods were actors.
Yeah. Except Crips.
The Crips were real gangsters.
Yes.
All the Bloods were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sean actually, Sean saw some stuff earlier. I did some stuff for the LA Weekly. So Sean saw that, so I was contacted, and then through that I got hired as a consultant.
Right.
And then Sean got me hired as a still photographer. But they gave Sean, when he was researching the film,
right,
or his part, they gave him like a plain clothes police car,
right,
to drive around, and just so he can get whatever.
Get the feel of it, right? Yeah.
So I would ride with him. So we got a little scanner, like a police scanner.
Yeah.
So like Sean and I would go down to South Central and stuff, and we'd be showing up on like police calls and stuff. So you'd hear the scanner.
Sean, bro,
I know.
What's happening here, guy?
I know.
That's crazy, right? Bro, what's your gun? You got no gun? That's great, right?
Wow, the whole thing is. So what happened?
It gets better.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so we were at this little, rib joint one night.
South Central or
South Central, 100.
You and Sean, right?
Yeah. 102nd and Avalon.
Hell
so
yeah.
It's a little rib joint. So, so we're parked in this small lot. It only fits 8 cars in it. It's this little joint there. So I'm with him, and we're eating in the car, somewhat dark there. And then a car pulls up next to us. And then these guys in the car. So again, it's the whole thing, looking over your shoulder.
Yeah.
Looking over your shoulder.
Head on the swivel, baby. Head on the swivel.
So they're like eyeing us. So
huh?
I know that, and Sean knows it also. And then at that time also, Sean always carried a gun.
Hell yeah, he did.
So
as you should.
So he takes his gun out as these guys are like eyeing us.
That's right. Hell yeah.
And then he sticks it on his lap. So he's got his hand on the gun there. And these guys are looking. And then the one guy says, hey, he's looking again. He said, hey, are you Sean Penn? And then it turned to, hey.
Yeah.
And the guys were 2 plainclosed cops.
Oh yeah,
next to us. So I'm just waiting for Sean to do something stupid to pick up a gun, and then and they blow us away, and that's done. So that was the good story with Sean.
But but people don't understand. Like, did he have to have that gun? Yeah, he had to have that gun. Goddamn right.
No, he did. Yeah. He always carried it there.
Right. You had to have a gun, bro. It's just like that. Like, don't be stupid, guys. Don't think you could just come into these communities, right?
No,
and just be like, oh yeah, whatever. I'm Sean Penn. No one's gonna. No, people are gonna with you.
No, he always carried that stuff.
Yeah. So you're on colors, right? And then what happened? I mean, you don't stop, right? But
I still shot.
Yeah.
After that too, so colors was good because I was able to meet people, and then also
is that when the film
neighborhoods?
Is that when kind of the film shooting film came? It was that.
No, my friend and I started shooting video probably in like '83 or like '84. So we would just hit this. We were just out on the streets.
Right. Yeah.
And that's it. So it sort of led to colors at around '86. So, but we continued shooting video probably till like the late 80s or something.
So you're shooting all the 80s, right? We're in LA. Now let me just, the riots happened. Right? The riots happened, right?
92?
92, okay. Right? 92, right? Yeah, I'm like in middle school, elementary at that time, right? But like, what's that like in the 80s? Like, and this is like, obviously, this is your work, but this is Los Angeles, all right? And how long have you been you've been in LA all your life, right?
Always, yeah.
You've always, you're an Angelino too.
Yes,
from the beginning to the end. So it's the riots happen, right? The change, everything kind of changes, but what is that like? Because you're in the communities, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything?
I was in Echo Park at the time, and actually the Echo Park homeboys sort of protected the area. They didn't let people in because I'm off of Sunset.
So they blocked that down.
Yeah. So interesting. I was there the day that everything broke out
in South Central.
Yeah. So I watched the next day. I went up to Oregon for a film project. So
Mhm.
I missed everything. So I was not able to go out and hit the streets because I probably couldn't gotten
Oh.
access to.
Right,
So,
right, 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 right. Yeah. And then
and
you
that
come
was
back,
92.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and everything was, I mean, was as the same. You
N-
say,
Not very. I mean, I think people's temperament changed.
right,
I think
right.
there's sort of a certain vibe
That
that you feel of the aftermath of something.
because you were doing a lot of, we haven't touched on that. You were
But,
doing a lot of work not only in South, you were working with South Central with Champagne and on Colors, but in
hmm
Watts.
yes.
Watts, right?
hmm
And what people don't know about Watts, Watts is just it's a huge old black community, right? Historical black community. The riots in the 1960s were out
Yeah.
of Watts,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, were you working when the riots happened? Were you still working in Watts?
I
And if so, was
I
there
was still
things
shooting a little bit there. Like all over, I would go. I'd go
right,
East
right,
LA. I'd
right,
go
right?
South. So
And like you said, the biggest thing was the temperament of Angelinos.
yeah, yeah. I think it was just a vibe.
Yeah.
After this happens, it's almost unspoken, but it's something is just not the same to you.
Mm, mm. Did you go because LA was? I mean, was up for a while, right?
Oh
Like, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
was on fire. Like, was like,
yeah.
I mean, they was stood like that for years, kind of. But like, did you go straight back in? Right when you came from that film project, you went straight back to LA.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Like 4 weeks later, everything sort of calmed down. I
everything
mean,
started to calm down, and then
for
you're
that.
able
So,
to get back in, right?
I mean, I wish I was there for it, but
Yeah,
I wasn't at that time.
right. So you're shooting, and then you kind of break though, right? Take a little break.
Yeah, I probably took a break from the sort of like, let's say, cholo culture, gang
Right,
culture.
right,
I took a break probably of about 20 years or so
right, right.
because I worked in the film industry.
There you go. Yeah,
So
yeah,
that
yeah,
was
yeah,
pretty
yeah,
much
yeah, 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 yeah,
full time.
yeah.
One film was 3 months or 4 months. You may be in LA, you may be in New York, you may be in Chicago, so all over the place you're
And can you
shooting.
just shed a little bit light about shooting film, right? And what
hmm
does that mean for people that don't really understand what, like, because you're a photographer, right? And you this is what brings your bread and butter. This is your income,
Yeah.
right? It always has. So you went from from shooting on assignments and doing stuff for Rolling Stones, and then now you're a still so what is that?
Yeah.
What does that entail, really?
Actually, earlier too, if I go back earlier, I actually got hired in 1985. I got hired on the film La
La
Bamba.
Bamba, that's
So
right. Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
that was my
La
first
Bamba,
film,
that's right. Yeah,
and I
yeah.
got hired on that film through my gang work. The
Mm,
director saw the work, and I got hired actually as a second photographer. They already had someone hired,
right.
so you call it specials. You come in to capture certain things, and then at that time, they offered me 500 a day for 5 days.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So they already have someone on there,
Right,
but we'll pay. And I said, that's great. I worked at a camera store
right,
at that time, and then I worked in the dark room.
right.
So I said, hey, 500 a day for
To
five
be on
days.
location,
Right.
right, right.
It's great. And then I said, hey, why don't I not do that? Why don't you pay me $250 a week, and then I'll work for 10 weeks on the whole film, because I wasn't even earning that at the
Over there
camera
at the
store. I
camera,
wasn't
right,
earning it.
right, right,
And they
right.
said, yeah. So I got hired on the whole film. So I was fortunate. So that's how it started. And then we went union the last week. So I was able to get into the union, which is very hard
Yeah,
to get
yeah,
in, and
yeah,
still
yeah,
hard.
yeah, yeah,
Today
yeah.
it's very hard. So that's how it started
Right.
on that thing. But when we go further up, after 85, after that film, I got hired on other films.
Mm-hmm.
And then what my job is, I guess the still photographer, they call it unit still photographer.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So basically, you're the one position that generally they don't want there
Let's start there, right?
because you're the only one there who doesn't have anything to do with the
film,
process
yeah.
of like making the film.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
there's
yeah,
certain
yeah,
directors like it. There are certain actors are okay with it, but generally you're always trying to fight for
like
space.
an outsider in there, right?
You're always an outsider. You're always trying to fight for a space. So you'll
Mm-hmm.
try to get yourself next to the camera sometimes,
Yeah,
and you'll
yeah.
stand and you sort of
You're in
make
there.
your stake this, and then again, like at the last
The
second,
DP is
someone
like,
comes
yeah,
over, you
pushes
have to
you.
move.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you're
yeah,
always
yeah,
trying to
yeah,
find
yeah, yeah, yeah,
access and
yeah,
stuff. And some
yeah.
films are easier, and some films are hard. But what you do is you capture the scene, what they're trying to capture film wise, and then you're shooting behind the scenes. You're shooting directors working, directors with actors working.
Right. But I mean, I mean, your work is phenomenal on that side too. Is there like, is there what brings those photos out like that, right? Because they're two different worlds. It's the gang world, and then you're working with actors and directors, but you're still able to capture the beauty at its highest quality. How do you find that?
I mean, for me, when I shoot on a film set, I'm always trying to do something, I guess, artistic wise,
Mm,
or more for my eye.
mm.
So I don't always shoot
What?
what they shoot.
Yeah,
Certain still people will hang on there and they'll shoot exactly the same
but you're
frame.
finding something.
Yeah.
You're
So I'm
looking.
always trying to find something because I'm thinking hopefully it can be used in some other way.
Right.
And some people
Right.
like that and then others don't. So
Mhm.
I've gotten, you know, I've been told otherwise don't shoot this.
Right.
You need to shoot this and stuff. And you know, I've been fired from what two films I think I was fired from. It's because I didn't shoot enough.
You didn't shoot enough.
And I didn't shoot a producer. I worked on this. I think it was Gone in 60 Seconds,
Yeah.
and that was a Jerry Bruckheimer
Yeah.
film. And then again, every day that he's on set,
He wants to.
Jerry said, "You have to run over and shoot pictures of him."
Yeah.
I mean, and
And
that was the deal.
That was what they wanted. That's what they wanted.
And that's what they want. So
yeah.
I was always a conservator. I was always conservative with shooting, and we shot film there. So I mean, some people shoot 30 rolls a day. I would usually shoot about 3 or 4 rolls a day because I was very conscious what I wanted to shoot.
Conscious
so
of the shot.
It all depends on the film that you're on. They didn't like the idea because I didn't have like notebooks like 12 inches high of images. So I think I worked like for 2 months, and then I was
That was it. And that was it. Yeah.
on that. So that happens sometimes, but you work with other directors sometimes who like still photography. So those are ones, or you work with an actor who likes still photography.
Right.
So you're able to create images that you want to create and that they like the work.
Right. So,
but it's always a struggle. I mean, it's always trying to find space.
Trying to find it. Yeah.
And not getting someone's eye line when you're shooting.
Yeah.
You know, the still photographer is the always one. If there's anything happening on a set, if it's a little tense, it's always the still photographer that
hey, move
that
him.
they
Yeah,
to leave set. Yeah.
Yeah. So 20. All right. 20 years. You took I mean,
somewhat break. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, where did that come from? Where was, yeah, and then obviously we'll get back to you coming back. But like, what were you just burnt out or like?
No, it wasn't that. It was that I was just working full time, and then I didn't have the contacts anymore on the street. I didn't have my street contacts to go out.
But it was always there, right? There was always.
Oh, it's always there to want it. Yes.
Wow,
it's always there.
20-year, yeah.
And then I just had all my all my negatives I just had stuck in a file cabinet. So I hadn't touched them for years.
Yeah.
After I shot, I stuck them away. So hundreds and hundreds of rolls of film.
Right.
I hadn't touched, but again, it's work. So you work, well, you know, the hours you can work, 12, 16, 18 hours a day sometimes.
Yeah.
But you're tired after you work too. So you want to, you want the weekends off sometimes.
Right. So, and, but Mexico, I want to talk about the stuff from Mexico, right? Because Mexico, I feel, was connected to the work that you were doing in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And so when you come back, I mean, in some of your New Mexico work is in the book. But where did you make that connection? And when I speak of that connection, is taking that gang culture element that was born in Los Angeles, right? Yes. And you connecting it to Mexico. And I know Mexico has been a big part of your, you've been traveling to Mexico shooting for quite some time. But like, when did you make that connection of Mexico?
1983. So again, I was still shooting the whole gang thing for 3 years. And again, the culture is so interesting to me. And I had a chance to really travel there.
Mm-hmm.
I would go
Mm-hmm.
with friends. My wife and I would go,
Right.
and we'd take trains at that time. They don't have the trains there anymore.
Wow.
So,
Wow. Wow.
so
Wow.
we
Wow.
would
Wow.
drive to El Centro, and we'd take a train to Guadalajara,
Wow.
or then down to Oaxaca.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what you know. So and I found it so interesting, and I
Right.
mean visually, and the culture. I mean,
And what was those first images? What was those first? What was the interest? Well, yeah. What was the first thing that really grabbed you like that down there? Because even though it was a sense of yeah, we're Mexicanos, but down there it's a whole
no,
different vibe.
no. It's just for me. It's the visual part. To me, it's how it hits the how it hits the senses.
Mm.
It's the sounds, it's the music, driving
Mm.
through small towns,
Mm.
hearing music's,
Yeah.
music
Yeah. Yeah.
playing
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
on that. And then I don't speak Spanish too,
Right.
so
Right.
it's
Right.
not good.
Yeah.
Obviously, I should. I can understand a few words,
Right. Right.
but I think when you have the camera, I think you communicate
You
through
communicate through the
that,
camera.
through almost through sign language or through the few
Wow.
words. I just found it. I just love,
Wow.
and I still
Wow.
shoot there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. 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 What about the gang culture there?
the gang culture,
Because that's
again,
a big thing what people don't know. Like that again. Speaking of it, like it's not just in Japan, but the cholo culture, which started in Los Angeles. It came to Mexico. In a real way. I don't know what year was that, right? But then then you tapped into that culture.
yes, through Instagram, what, 2 or 3 years ago, and everything stems to there because when I started posting images again, someone would send me something. Hey, that's my cousin in the photo. That's my father. That's
Right,
this.
right.
So again, that sort of instilled in me the interest. How can I reconnect and really hit the streets? So that's
Right.
when I started trying to hit the streets there. Someone wrote me from Mexico City, Chito Banda. He goes, and that's his Instagram, and he's been shooting a lot of the
The cholo culture down there.
yeah.
Yeah,
And his
yeah.
work is great. So I said, hey, I'm coming down there. Can we hook up and meet?
Mhm.
So we met, and then he's been able to get me
Yeah,
into
yeah.
neighborhoods
And-
to
and-
really shoot. That's how it
And
started.
what was that like, right? Coming from the birth of Chicano gang culture of the 80s, right? And seeing it. And then you're like, and then going to Mexico, right? Because again, like it's a different vibe. Like
Totally different.
But it's crazy because they look and they kind of look how we used to, right? Rock it in the 90s.
Yeah.
And they're rocking it like that
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
So I mean, well, yeah.
Mexico City it's really interesting because I mean Mexico City is sort of like New York or like Europe.
How yeah it
And
is.
that's
How
so-
yeah it is.
So it's going to the outskirts of it. So
yeah?
we go like a half hour out of it in this place called Neza.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And
And we shoot, yeah. And that's, you're right, it has a look. I mean, someone who I shoot there, him and his wife, his whole house is this lowrider vibe to it. And again, it's the old,
Yeah,
and everything is old school.
yeah.
It is.
Yeah,
So they dress
yeah,
that way.
Yeah,
So it's,
yeah. Beautiful.
And like everything is LA. LA hats, LA shirts.
yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Walls. It's like written LA on it.
Yeah.
So they really hold. And for me, it helps, I think, because of the films I worked on.
Right.
Obviously.
Right.
That helps a lot. And because I come from LA too. And then I show them work. So all these things sort of help. And
Yeah. A thing in the book that that not only do you touch on, but that you do is that you come back after this 20-year break and you shoot some of the individuals,
yes.
and like, cause you didn't have to do that. Like, what was that choice? Where did that come from? If you could just speak a little bit on that.
Should I say Instagram again or not? So what I separate from
Right?
that.
'Cause, yeah.
So when I hooked up with some people, again, I was able to find someone who I actually photographed. And then I've been trying to find children of these people who've also passed away.
Right, right, right,
So I've
right.
been able to start shooting the children, and I have them hold the
Right, right,
image of
right.
their
And
parents.
and what's that sense? Why? Like, what do you think that is it for you? Is it for them? Like, or just you're just like, this is how I feel, and that's what
I
I'm.
mean, it's for me, obviously, trying to create something, except it's also the gratitude I get when I hand them a
Yeah,
photograph
yeah,
of their parent,
yeah.
that all they see is on a little screen or something, when I actually have a physical image
Mm,
to hand over to
mm.
them.
And can you walk us through that, right? Because I've you've probably there's countless of people of individuals that you've handed a print to, right? And is there something that a common thing that comes from that? Like people that what does that mean? That people that have never had a beautiful print of their family of their loved ones in their hands. Is there something that happens or just
I
or
mean,
feeling or
well, I think it's something. I mean, how I how I view it is, as someone who's a photographer and who's visual, it's really their reaction visual. It's really seeing it in their eyes. Sometimes someone holding an image up
mm,
that they can actually hold,
yeah,
of a relative
yeah,
or a friend. It's that instant handing something over, and it's that quick reaction
right,
of seeing
right.
it for the first few seconds.
Right, right,
That's
right,
what I
right,
was in.
right, right,
And
right,
then
right.
they'll thank me afterwards for it, or this, that. But it's really that first
It's
time
that
of
first
someone, it's like opening that
that first
special
yeah, yeah,
Christmas present,
yeah,
and their
yeah,
reaction.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And that's the most important thing to me,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
besides creating that image too. Because I'm always handing the image first to it.
Yeah.
And they see it, and then I'm having them hold the image
Mm-hmm,
for me, so I can
mm-hmm,
work with sort of
mm-hmm.
a
Another thing that we have on the book with Click is that you chose to put in letters and what I don't think we talked about it is the communication that you've had with individuals throughout these years too, right? Because you kept communication. Some of the guys got life, some of them went to prison, right?
yeah.
What was that for? That's another reason why I think your work speaks for it. It's like you chose to keep these relate these friendships, right? Why and what did that do to your work?
I mean, for having those, uh, I guess it's my collection,
Your collection.
and I felt it, to me, it was important not just to include only images in a book,
Mm.
to really include poetry, and also writing as yourself, who wrote sort of the history and the life of a cholo.
Mm-hmm.
It's because the majority of people who see this book will be outsiders in the
Mm-hmm.
end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
trying to educate people sometime, if there's an image of someone holding a gun or doing this, it goes beyond that image.
Mm.
So trying to understand the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
I was able, I mean, which really helped me is Hat and Beard Press,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
who agreed to even publish the book when I
Mm-hmm.
showed them the work,
Mm-hmm.
where they were able to really let me work with them and show them
Mm-hmm.
all these ideas I had to
Mm-hmm.
really include. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it was really it was helpful, because they gave me a lot of latitude.
Mm.
Sometimes with certain publishers,
Yeah.
you give them something and that's it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
decide
Yeah.
what they want.
Right.
So
Right. Right.
so
Right. Right. Right.
so
Right.
I've always had a really good working relationship
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with them.
What do you want people to take away from your book, right? Like really, like that's obviously you said that you want to give them a little bit of insight of the culture, but is there anything that you really want people to like understand and when they open up this book?
I want someone to really try to, um, I, I don't know if it's to provoke thought.
Mm.
Maybe it's more, I'm trying to create a dialogue,
Mm.
because again, a lot of my work deals with gang violence.
Yeah.
And again, certain images, it always happens, and someone say, "Hey, you're exploiting this culture." But my answer to that is really, some of my images, it's really to create a dialogue
Dialogue.
of really why is this happening.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
when you see
Right.
the prison aspect
Right.
of it, what is that pipeline, school
Yeah.
to
School to prison
prison?
pipeline.
So hopefully someone will be interested enough
Right.
beyond the work
Right.
or hopefully my work creates in someone where they want to learn more.
Right, right.
I've got one shot that let me see if I can find it here. 1 second. That I just shot this a week ago of this.
With that kid?
Yeah,
I seen that. Yeah,
the one I did.
That one right there. Yeah, I just
Him.
seen that one. That one was. I just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah?
shot this last week.
Yeah. This one is.
Yeah, and the more
Yeah.
I look at it, so it's just
And how crazy, like, I mean, because you've seen our culture change, right? And like, because this is all new, right? Having tattoos on the face, like,
yeah.
right?
And he's young.
He's young. They're all kids, like,
Yeah,
15, 16.
Yes.
Tattoos right on the face. Yeah.
And then actually his mother,
Yeah.
who has a son in Los Padrinos, with all that's going on now, and he's already been in a year with no trial yet. And I hear the stories I hear coming out of there.
Right.
And she's she's an advocate. So she's really she's into
right.
It's the school
to prison pipeline. Yeah,
and she's active in that, and she's really working with this one boy too. That hopefully he's in some school now that I think it's like grade 7 to 12, and you know. In like one class, one teacher in one class, how you can come to learn anything with that age range,
right?
12 years old to like
right.
17.
Yeah.
So she's trying to work with all that stuff, because those type of schools and those classes, that's some of the cause of it.
Right.
Really, what do you do to really change that at that age?
Right. And I mean, because California is locking little kids away, and they have been, I think, and that's a big part of the culture. Before we end this, is like this culture is not only birthed in gangs of Los Angeles, but it's birthed inside the prison system.
Yeah, it's
right. Like,
I mean, can you together,
right? I mean, and you're an outsider coming into this world, like, but having children, these black and brown kids in Los Angeles, it's something that's always has been here. I mean, right?
Oh, always. And my friend who's the probation officer, he's retired now, but what he said too is he ran across a lot of children, young people, who did some really serious.
Right.
But he also says that he's never met a bad kid. That's what he says.
That's what Father Greg says. He's never met a bad kid. Yeah,
I mean, if you can get through that, you always see something endearing and charming.
Right.
And also, I mean, with my work, I think it's serious in some pose, but really, hopefully someone sees beyond that image, or looks closely to it and spends time, so they can see there's other sides of people.
And thank you.
That's it. Sure, you're welcome.